Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I never anticipated the dramatic turn my life would take when I returned from visiting my family overseas. The trip was filled with precious moments spent with my aging parents, and as a responsible homeowner, I had made all necessary arrangements to ensure the security of my property during my absence. Little did I know that my neighbor's seemingly harmless favor of collecting my mail would lead to a shocking and intrusive discovery. Let me provide some context. I reside in a different country from my family, making occasional visits to spend cherished moments with them. Knowing the importance of these reunions and the limited time we had together, I wanted to avoid any regrets of neglecting my loved ones. Therefore, I entrusted my neighbor with the task of picking up my mail while I was away, a small favor that he gladly accepted. We had always maintained a cordial relationship, often sharing snacks and enjoying barbecues during the sweltering summer months by the pool I had built in my backyard. Now, I must address the incident that shattered our amicable rapport and drove me to scream at him, banishing him from my property forever. Having managed to secure a morning flight home, I promptly notified my neighbor, expecting his customary prompt reply. To my surprise, there was an uncharacteristic silence from his end, which struck me as peculiar given his constant attachment to his phone. Hours later, as the sun began its descent, a strange noise emanated from my backyard, alerting me to a presence I hadn't anticipated. Peering through the window, I was confronted with a bewildering sight that awakened a fiery mix of fury and disgust within me. My neighbor, alongside a group of friends, reveled in my pool, their nudity flaunted shamelessly. To make matters worse, my backyard furniture had become a makeshift lounge, littered with empty beer cans. Overwhelmed by a cocktail of anger and repulsion, I confronted my neighbor, who undoubtedly realized the gravity of his transgression. Yet, in a feeble attempt to justify his behavior, he shamelessly claimed that it was a mere gathering to beat the heat, akin to when he brought his children over for a quick dip. I vehemently rejected his flimsy comparison, highlighting the obvious disparity between his children's innocent swims and a horde of naked strangers defiling my sanctuary. As some of the guests began to comprehend the gravity of their intrusion and hastily departed, I surmised that my neighbor had misled them, falsely asserting that he had obtained my permission, or that I would remain oblivious to their escapade. Enraged, I confronted him once more, asserting my rights as the property owner and demanding that he never set foot on my premises again. Threatening to involve the police if necessary, I made it unequivocally clear that any trespassing would be met with swift retribution. Still reluctant to leave, my neighbor forced my hand, compelling me to resort to dousing him with a hose until he finally retreated from my property. The cleanup that followed was burdensome, but I preferred the arduous task over allowing him to linger on my premises for another second. As for my mail, I never retrieved it, confident that if anything truly important had arrived, the sender would have contacted me again. The loss of a few coupons seemed trivial compared to the invasion of my privacy. This incident shook my confidence in leaving my home unattended during future trips. Thankfully, I secured a backup plan for my next journey. A trusted friend agreed to house sit, and I compensated her accordingly, ensuring the refrigerator was stocked and she had access to all necessary amenities. Furthermore, I installed an additional surveillance camera in my backyard, a failsafe to catch any potential repeat offenders. Instructing my friend on how to contact the authorities should my neighbor attempt a similar audacious act, I armed her with the knowledge of accessing the footage. Part of me hoped that my neighbor would respect the boundaries and refrain from any further transgressions for the sake of his family. Yet, another part of me yearned for justice to prevail, perhaps with the law intervening to demonstrate the severity of his actions. Moreover, I couldn't help but envision the uncomfortable conversation he would have to engage in with his wife and children, explaining why their access to my refreshing pool had been abruptly revoked. The next one is a pro-revenge story. A good friend of mine inherited his grandparents' house about 4 years ago. He decided to live there temporarily while he figured out what to do with the property. Since he grew up in that house, he didn't want to sell it. Less than a week after he moved in, he received a visit from a neighborhood committee. They introduced themselves as the 3 board members of the Homeowners Association and asked him to sign his membership papers. They were extremely nosy and rude. One of them even tried to enter his garage without asking. When my friend stopped him and asked where he wanted to go, the board member had the audacity to say, "I need to check your garage to ensure everything is in order. I have the right to do this every 2 weeks, and denying me access is an offense that will result in a fine." Fed up with their audacity, he kicked them out of the house. While doing so, one of the board members shoved some papers into his face and demanded that he sign them immediately. Those papers were supposed to be signed before moving in, and my friend had already been living there for a week. Once they were gone, he took a look at the papers. They were ridiculous, granting the Homeowners Association unreasonable rights. For example, the Homeowners Association had the right to visit your home every 2 weeks, inspecting the garage to ensure it wasn't used for storage, and checking for gasoline or gas containers. They required the lawn to be mowed every week, and demanded snow to be shoveled every 2 hours during snowfall, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. They also prohibited parking more than one car on the property, except inside the garage, and had numerous other unreasonable rules. A few days later, the board members returned and asked why he hadn't signed the papers yet. They also wanted to check the garage again. This time, he didn't allow them entry and made it clear that he would never become a member of their club. To them, this meant war. Within a week, they sent him fines totaling over $1,000, with several fines specifically for denying them access to his home, each worth $250. However, my friend didn't take them seriously and used their letters as kindling for his grill. Then came the day when they went way too far. He returned home and found one of the board members had broken into his garage, standing inside and writing things down on a notepad. But that wasn't the worst part. They were in the process of taking down his 2 magnificent oak trees in front of the house. Those trees had been planted by his great-grandparents when they were newlyweds and moved into the house. The Homeowners Association had called in a professional crew for this purpose. One of the trees was already severely damaged, reduced to just a stump. They had just begun working on the other one. He couldn't contain his anger. He ordered the tree crew to stop immediately and explained to them that he was the owner, and what they were doing was highly illegal. They had no idea because the board member claimed the trees violated the rules, alleging that too many leaves from the trees fell into the neighbor's garden. My friend informed them that it wasn't a legal reason to cut down the trees, but the board member insisted that my friend had given his consent because the trees violated the Homeowners Association's rules. Later, my friend looked it up and discovered that they actually had a bylaw stating that if a garden produced more than one 40-liter sack of leaves within 2 weeks, the garden owner had to remove the offending trees within 2 weeks. He informed them that he would overlook their trespassing if they agreed to be witnesses in court. Then he called the police on the board members for trespassing and breaking and entering. They had used bolt cutters to gain access to the garage, which he had always kept secured with a large bike lock after their previous attempts to break in. The legal process must have been glorious. Not only did they have to reimburse him for the lock and the tree, which was worth a significant amount, over $50,000 if I remember correctly, but they also had to pay damages for the second tree. He had a professional arborist tend to it to ensure proper healing, which alone cost over $1,000. However, these idiots actually believed the trial would be unfair and tried to fight it, which likely cost them an additional $10,000 to $15,000 in legal fees and court costs. In total, this trial must have cost them over $120,000. Afterwards, my friend went to another civil court and sued them for emotional damages. He emphasized how much those trees meant to him, planted by his great-grandparents with seeds from their home country. He painted a vivid picture and also expressed feeling threatened by the Homeowners Association, making it difficult for him to sleep as he constantly feared their attempts to access his house. The court bought his arguments and awarded him $500,000, in addition to the costs of a state-of-the-art alarm system to help him feel safe in his own home once again. In total, he cost the Homeowners Association nearly $750,000. They were forced to file for bankruptcy, and an individual was appointed to audit their finances so that my friend could recover his money. The best part is yet to come. The mediator discovered that these 3 individuals had been defrauding the Homeowners Association for over 10 years, using fines as a means to supplement their income. All 3 had to sell their houses to pay my friend. Now, he is one of the most popular residents, constantly receiving invitations for barbecues and other events. You see, most people never wanted the Homeowners Association in the first place. However, the board members practically coerced them into signing the contract, claiming it was not optional. They threatened a $500 fine for failing to sign before moving in. Out of over 50 members, only 6 actually wanted the Homeowners Association. People suspect that those 6 members got a share of the action as a reward for spying on their neighbors and reporting violations. The next one is a petty revenge story. My parents rent a house on a 1/4 acre of land. The land with rows of grapes is not being rented to my parents, but the landlord lets us pick them and juice them every year. The only access to the grapes is through the land my parents rent. Before my parents moved in, this old lady, Maureen, used to pick the grapes with her family and juice them. As a side note, Maureen has her own grapes, but she likes to use our landlord's grapes too because previous tenants did not. Every year it's a battle to make Maureen wait to pick grapes so we can pick a share. The landlord has been clear that we get first dibs on the grapes because we're his actual tenants. We always leave her at least a row, 1 of 4. Every year she tries to be a sneaky little person and get the grapes, but this year was the worst. My mom told Maureen that she was going to pick the grapes this weekend. Well, this weekend came and went without being able to pick grapes. My mom's helper crew got sick. My dad was recovering from major surgery, and she couldn't find the time or energy. Maureen's crotchety old self calls to inform my mom that she is coming tomorrow to pick all the grapes we didn't. My mom asked her to please wait a few more days as her husband, my dad, has cancer and her helpers were sick. Maureen's response: "That's too bad. You had your chance. My family is coming tomorrow and we are picking the grapes." Of course, my poor mom loses it at this point and begins screaming, "Shame on you, Maureen! You call yourself a Christian!" Maureen continues telling her she had her chance. So my mom came in and told me this story. I said, "Absolutely not. We are staying up as late as needed to pick every single grape off the vines. Every single one. We both called as many friends as we could. The troops are being gathered. We now have about 10 people to help us pick the grapes. We will pick every single grape so that when Maureen and her family show up, there will not be one little fruit left on the vine." All-nighter for the grapes. Update. Oh my wow. Okay, well, I love how many of you would help pick grapes. It makes me feel bad about the fact that the update isn't super satisfying. Maureen called my mom last night, an hour or so into picking, to apologize and said we could have all the grapes. My mom, being a much better person than I am, told her she can still have a row or two because we didn't need all the grapes. But Maureen kept saying no, and that she won't come by at all. Ironically, it almost sounded like she was throwing a fit about it. Like, we're being nice and still letting you come. So we did pick grapes, but not everything. We still hate Maureen. Apparently she's 92 and she believes she will live forever because of her homemade grape juice. So that's one reason she's so crazy about this whole thing. Maybe she will live forever, but that would be unfortunate because she's an a-hole. The next one is an entitled people story. Not long ago, I posted about how my brother went out of his way to follow me when I tried to go camping alone. Him and that crazy vehicle he calls the mini ram that he made by cutting up a minivan and adding all sorts of other mods. My brother has stolen beer from me before on previous camping trips because he and his friends always drink too much and never buy enough. And when he followed me to my camping spot with his own camper a couple of weeks prior, he tried to steal a 6-pack from my fridge and acted like a big baby when I made him give it back. So I thought up this little gem of an idea. But it was no easy feat as my brother will drink just about any beer, so long as it gets him drunk. To try and find a beer that was truly nasty, I started asking around and buying different brands. After a couple of weeks, I hit pay dirt. I won't say the brand name of the beer, but it was bad. There was so much hop to the flavor that it made me shudder every time I took a swig. I could barely finish one bottle without puking because it made me gag so much. So this stuff was perfect. Also, I know some people really like that kind of overly hoppy beer. I'm not trying to offend, but to me it was just horrid. I started openly talking about going camping again in my favorite area, and getting my friends to join in. My brother easily got wind of this and decided he wanted to go camping too. He showed up with his mini ram and camper about 2 hours after I'd gotten to the campsite. Only this time he didn't try to park next to me, and instead went to the next spot about 100 yards further down the road. My friends and I partied it up in our own way, played music, danced like idiots around a fire, played stupid games, all the usual. And knowing my brother, he and his friends would run out of beer at some point and try to mooch off us because they have no concept of drinking in moderation. They didn't bother us on Friday night, but on Saturday night around 1 or 2 a.m., my brother hobbled over asking for beer. We all just ignored him like he wasn't there, which made him get an attitude. One of my friends brought his big cooler and was keeping all our good beer and food in it, and we kept the cooler near us or locked in my truck at all times. Inside my camper, I left 2 full 6-packs of that horrid beer in the mini fridge. My brother just grabbed them and walked away. He acted like he was being sneaky, but seeing a drunk man act like he was invisible was just hilarious. About a half hour later, my brother came hobbling back and looking sick. He started demanding to know what was in the beer I bought. I started asking him what he meant because I didn't give him any beer. He looked flustered for a moment and then finally just said he took some beer from my camper. I asked if it was the brew, and he said yes. I laughed and said that stuff was crap, and he could have it. I even pulled out another six-pack that was minus the one I drank when I tested the beer and tried to hand it to him. He looked like he wanted to throw up at the sight of it and left. Then, just to be extra petty, my friends and I snuck over to his campsite after a little while and left the remaining six-pack on top of his cooler. He and his friends were all wasted and actually still drinking the nasty beers I tricked them into stealing, and their faces all showed how bad it was. Every time one of them took a swig, it was followed by RBF, but they were so drunk that they probably wouldn't even notice there was more of that same beer. My friends and I watched from nearby as they kept drinking and making sour faces. My brother eventually puked on himself and then ran into the river to get the vomit off himself. He threw up some more in the water. It wasn't a pretty sight. Even though we could barely see him in the dark, we could still hear him. He repeatedly threw up with his face in the water and made loud gurgle noises, then cursed my name over and over again. That's when we finally had enough of watching them. I didn't see my brother or his two friends again until well into the afternoon. They were all badly hungover, and despite how much they drank, they couldn't forget that nasty beer they had the night before, especially since the bottles were littered all over the ground. My brother actually demanded I apologize, and I just laughed and said, "You actually want me to apologize to you for stealing beer from me?" And then we all started laughing at him. He left humiliated, and we didn't interact again. I drove home before he did this time, and he's not spoken about what happened to our parents, and I've heard nothing from mutual friends. I guess this time he wants to keep his humiliation a secret. I think next time I'll get some beer spiked with a laxative to leave for him. That might be funny. The next one is an entitled parent story. A very good friend of mine recently got on a plane with her 3 boys, 8, 9, and 10, by herself to visit Grandma for a month over summer vacation. I was on transport duty because driving to and from the airport is a young man's game, and also I love spending time with my homies. There was an accidental on-purpose scheduling issue. Namely, my friend wanted a day in a hotel to recuperate from the flight with her 3 boys before her mom starts driving her insane. Husband is coming up in a few weeks because he just started a new job and can't just be like, back in a month. So I snatch all 4 people and luggage from the airport and give them a lift to the hotel. All 3 boys are bouncing off the walls and my friend just needs a nap. So, hotel pool time. She's posted up under an umbrella and is dead to the world. I'm in the pool with the boys. We started off playing Marco Polo and then had to get creative once other folks were in the pool as well. Eventually, we settled on a game called Not Done Yet. Basically, I'm standing on one side of the steps out of the pool, and when the boys feel like it, they try and leave the pool. I decide if they're done or not yet using a complicated examination process that amounts to picking the kid up, giving them a bit of a shake, faking a big sniff, saying, "Not done yet," and yeeting them back into the pool. Obviously, if someone's waterlogged or actually wants out, I won't stop them, but typically there's giggling and a bit of a cue for inspection, so the game continues. I get a workout, they get tired out, everybody wins. Then a new player enters the playing field in the form of a very sweet-looking girl, approximately 6 years old, wearing water wings. She asks if she can play too. I say of course she can, but she needs to ask whoever is watching her first, so I know it's okay with everyone. She says, "Okay," and exits the pool. I'm keeping an eye on where she's going so I can smile and give the "I'm not a creep" wave to whoever's minding the kid. Only she doesn't run to one of the adults on the lounge chairs. She runs back into the hotel dripping wet. She disappears inside and comes back down about 5 minutes later and says, "Mommy says it's okay." Only she's not the type of kid who lies without batting an eye and is obviously fibbing. I ask if she really did, and the little girl says, Well, Mommy was busy, so I think it's okay." It's at this point that the proverbial record scratches, and my inner monologue says, "What?" I summon the oldest of the boys from the waterborne shenanigans and ask him to go wake up his mom so she can keep an eye on things for a minute. I need to go take care of something. While he's bearding the dragon in her den, I crouch down and tell the little girl, "We need to go inside and find an adult because it's not okay that you're in the pool all by yourself, okay? You didn't do anything wrong, but you've got some growing to do before you can be in the pool all by yourself, okay?" At this point, the oldest homie has awoken the mom, and she's now looking at me with a what the crap look on her face. I mouth later at her, and then take the little girl's hand and bring her to the concierge desk of the hotel. I explain the situation with the little girl to the concierge, whose face goes from confusion to pained before giving the girl a smile and thanking me for bringing this to his attention. The concierge guy takes responsibility for the girl, and I go back out to the pool to explain what had happened to my friend. She was livid on the little girl's behalf, but mostly just wanted to resume her nap. Conveniently at that time, the middle homie had gotten out of the pool and was making faces at us while we were talking. I told my friend to get some sleep. I'll watch the boys. Then the middle homie got spear tackled back into the water because actions have consequences. Maybe 20 minutes to half an hour later, once I was starting to run out of steam, I sensed a disturbance in the force. A rather irate woman wearing a blouse that was inside out was dragging the little girl from before out to the pool area and demanding to know who told her she couldn't swim. The little girl, who was now silent with tears on her cheeks and a pathetically deflated water wing, pointed at me. I was instructed to get my ass out of the pool and explain myself. Why on earth was it so hard to watch an extra child while she got some adult time to herself? Why did I insist on ruining her first chance to get away from it all in months? Her little girl is an angel and is no trouble to watch, blah blah blah. I explained that it wasn't a good idea to leave a little one in a pool with no adult supervision, pointing to a number of signs about no lifeguard on duty, all children must be accompanied by an adult, etc., etc. The inside-out lady is getting steadily more belligerent, explaining like I'm slow that her daughter knows how to swim and was wearing floaties and would have been fine. She's getting more and more in my face, trying to act like I'm just the worst for ruining everything. And then player 3 enters the fight. It's my friend, and she's fresh out of fluffs to give. She starts reading Inside Out Lady the Riot Act, demanding to know how she could be so stupid and irresponsible, and how dare she try to act like I'm the bad guy here. Inside Out Lady opens her mouth to reply and just gets steamrolled. Just look at your daughter, see what you've done? Appeared to finally get through to the woman because she looks down at her daughter, then back up to my friend. There's a flicker of shame on her face, and then it's all rage. And she swung. I'm not ashamed to admit that stepping between those two without backup seemed like a poor life choice. I stopped the boys before they could get caught in the crossfire, told them to take a step back, and when several hotel employees came out to break up the fight, I stepped in. I grabbed my friend and pulled her back, while 2 guys from the hotel grabbed the other woman. The combatants are separated and the police are called. My friend and I are back at her lounge chair with a large first aid kit the hotel staff gave us while the boys hover and make sure Mom's okay. She's sporting a magnificent shiner from that first punch and a couple of other scrapes and bruises, but mostly seems livid that she got cold clocked like that. The police arrive and get the story from everyone even tangentially involved. We wind up being asked to provide contact information to the police. My friend declines a checkover by an EMT saying she's fine, just sore. The story Inside Out Lady provided didn't match up at all with what the hotel cameras showed, and she got some shiny bracelets put on her before getting shoved in the back of a squad car. My friend said she would be delighted to press charges for assault, and was told the police would be in touch. Once the police were satisfied, it was definitely time to retreat to the hotel room. I got dressed and left for the evening after making sure everybody was okay, and on the way out I asked one of the front desk folks what happened with the woman and her daughter. The woman was arrested, and the girl's father came to get her. They couldn't give me any more information than that. Hope she's okay. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.